John Wooden, the legendary college basketball coach, died on Friday of natural causes at UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was 99 years old. No basketball coach has ever won more than he did. He was called the Wizard of Westwood for his masterful oversight of the UCLA program. He led it from 1948 until 1975. John Wooden built one of the best sports dynasties ever behind the play of such stars as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton. From 1964 to 1975, the Bruins won 10 national championships, 7 in a row between 1967 and 1973. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2003. 6 years later, the Sporting News selected him as the greatest coach in American sports history. Wooden was born in 1910 on a small farm in Indiana. He became a star athlete and student at Purdue University. He led the Boilermakers to the national championship in 1932. That same year, he was named the National Player of the Year. He went on to become a high school coach and English teacher. He loved words. He loved writing poetry. He used it to motivate and inspire beyond the basketball court. His essential keys to winning were embodied in what he called the pyramid of success, a combination of 15 virtues such as loyalty, self-control, and industriousness. John Wooden appeared on this show in the year 2000. He sat with me for a one-on-one conversation. We were later joined by Bill Walton and Bill Russell. Here is a look at that conversation.
What is the most rewarding thing about coaching for you?
The fact that almost all of the players that I had in my 27 years at UCLA graduated, got their degrees, most of them in 4 years, and practically all have done well in chosen professions. I think there's over 30 attorneys, there's 8 ministers, there's 10 or 11 dentists, 10 or 11 doctors, a lot of teachers, but the vast majority probably just in business of one sort or another. And that makes you feel good.
How were you able to do that, win so many games in that 10-year span? Obviously you had good players, but you also had other things.
Obviously, I didn't win them. My players did. I like to feel that I helped. Of course I do. But winning breeds winning. And our mutual friend, Mike Krzyzewski, the better he does, the better players he's going to receive. And when you get something rolling, I think they come to you. It's just like building a better mousetrap. And then as time goes by, you learn more about how to work with them. I always tried to take, well, for years, I would take an extra course in psychology, even after I was teaching, just to learn something about working with people, because I think as far as knowledge of the game, whether it be baseball managers or basketball teacher coaches or whatever it is, I think the knowledge, there's not too much difference, but there's tremendous difference in the way they can get those under their supervision to work together for a common end.
You stepped away from it when you did because what?
I would say most people have a little difficult believing this, but no one knew I was going to do it. I didn't know it. My wife didn't know it. No one. I decided as I walked off the floor after a semifinal game, after we had had a wonderful semifinal game in the Final Four against the University of Louisville. Danny Crum, their coach, a dear friend, played for me and been an assistant, and I knew he was going to be an outstanding teacher of the game. And I visited with him a moment and then started over, and I didn't feel real good. And for the first time ever, I didn't want to go meet the press. And I've never felt that way. And just to myself, I thought, if I feel that way, it's time to get out. And I went to the dressing room. I congratulated my players. I said, I didn't know how we'd do Monday night against Kentucky. I thought we'd do all right because I think we're much quicker, and I believe we have enough size to contend with them. But I want you young men to know that regardless of how we come out Monday night, you haven't given me a problem on or off the court all year, and it's pretty nice to say about the last team you'll ever teach. And they were shocked, and my assistant shocked, and my trainer shocked, and they were all surprised, and I'd made up my mind that quickly. I had thought that I would be for 2 more years. I didn't want to leave the cupboard bare when I left, but I could see for 4 more years with the players I had coming back and the new players that I had recruited and I knew were coming, such as Kiki Vandeweghe and David Greenwood and Royal Hamilton, Brad Holland, all outstanding. And I knew, but I expected to teach 2 more years, and then I'd leave when I left, find material.
But you know how rare it is for someone to know when the time is right for them to leave? How many people either leave too early and then try to come back, or B, wait too long and have to be pushed off the stage? For you to have that,
Well, I can't explain exactly why, but I've noticed just exactly what you said. For example, I was a great admirer of Willie Mays.
Right.
And to see him hang on at the last when he had misjudged a fly ball and the bat was too slow to get around, and I like to remember him as he was.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of that, I think, in athletics, where they just stay around a year or two too long. And I hate to see it.
I do too. I think it's partly, I've asked them about it, and part of it is it's the only thing they know how to do.
Well, that might be true.
And that's to say what it's what I love doing. It's the only thing I know how to do. That and there's also the attendant glamour, attention.
Well, I think some like the attention more than others. I don't think there's any question about it. But there's others that after a point you're sort of glad to get away from it. I know. I'm asked so oftentimes, do you miss it? I miss the teaching. I miss the practices. I love to teach, and I love to plan my practices. And it'd take us a couple hours to plan my practice, and the practice would never last 2 hours, and usually not over an hour and a half. I enjoyed that, and that's the only thing I've missed. I haven't missed the games.
You haven't missed the game?
I have missed the games.
Haven't missed the greatness of a.
The folderol that goes with it, the meeting
well,
with
not so much the
alumni and all
folderol,
that.
but just the sheer excitement, because sports, the great thing about sports, you never know who's going to win. You never know, anything could happen. It's live.
Well, I think I was blessed because shortly after I retired, my great-grandchildren started coming along, and in the years I have 7 grandchildren, 10 great-grandchildren. I've had something to keep me occupied, and so I haven't had time to miss it.
Are most coaches teachers, or is that a rarity to find that a coach really is at best a teacher?
I think the good ones are teachers, the better ones, and that doesn't mean just the ones that are in the limelight. When we speak of the better coaches today, most people think of the ones that are in the limelight.
Right.
And there may be much better teaching done from people that most people don't hear of, but they're back somewhere. It's like, wasn't it Gray's Elegy, written in a country churchyard. He says, full many a gem of purest ray serene, the deep unfathomed caves of ocean bare, full many a flowers born to blush unseen, a wasted sweetness on the desert air. They're just as beautiful, and I think there are many coaches that way that are not in the limelight, but they're doing a tremendous job.
Tell me about the pyramid of success.
Well, I devised that to help me be a better teacher. I hoped and give the youngsters under my supervision something to which to aspire other than just a higher mark in my classroom. I taught English all the time, and actually that came about because students in my English class is more than sports. But I wanted to give them something to which to aspire more than just a higher mark in the classroom or more points in an athletic contest. And I thought about it a long time, and I came up with my own definition of success, which is unusual. My father tried to teach me and my 3 brothers when I was in grade school that you should never try to be better than someone else. You should always be learning from others, but you should never cease trying to be the best you could be, because that's under your control and the other isn't. And I recall that, and I recalled a professor that I'd had when the class discussed success, and I ran across a little verse. I love poetry. You may or may not have heard that. I definitely did. A little verse said, "At God's footstool to confess, a poor soul knelt and bowed his head. I failed," he cried. The master said, "Thou didst thy best." That is success. And from those things I coined my definition of success, which is peace of mind, attained only through self-satisfaction in knowing you made the effort. Do the best of which you're capable. And that's all I ever ask of those under my supervision. Make the effort to do the best. Don't try to be better than someone else. Just make the effort to be the best you can. Don't expect you're going to make tremendous improvement each day. You're going to make a little each day, but let's make sure we make a little each day. Like the creed my dad gave me when I graduated from grade school, one point was make each day your masterpiece. I tried to teach that way and get the youngsters under my supervision to think along those terms. But the definition, after coming up with that, didn't seem to be serving the purpose, and I decided it was because it was something abject. I wanted to come up with something you could see, and eventually I came up with this idea of a pyramid, and worked on it for 14 years before I brought it to its present form when I was teaching at Indiana State University just prior to going to UCLA.
What would you change about the way college basketball is played today?
I think the vast majority it is wrong. To pass up the education a few years with youngsters their own age, their own interests, and they're thrown in with an older group whose interests and well, lifestyle is a little different, and I think they just missed something, and I think the vast majority it is incorrect, and they're doing it for, I think, just for money, and money, like all material things, gets away.
He was responsible for breaking your record at San Francisco.
Well, the last game we lost in college was to UCLA at Westwood.
Right.
And then we won we won 55 straight, then they won 5 straight to go to 60. Well, that record stood for a number of years. Then he came along and just obliterated it. I mean, he just...
when we got to 60, you should have said... You should have seen Coach when he was just, that'll show Bill.
Was he like that?
No, not at all.
What was practice like with this guy?
Incredible. It was so intense. It was a symphony because he was a caged tiger. He sits here now as the conductor, as the calm person. But he was up and down that sideline. And remember, this was one of the greatest players ever. Not just a coach. And he was so quick. And that was what his game was all about. And he would warm us up every day. And he would put his hands out to shake the wrist and the fingers loose. He was so quick. When I played for him, he was in his mid-60s at the time, and his hands would disappear. That's how quick he was in his mid-60s. But more importantly than his physical quickness, and Bill will appreciate this most of all, was his mental quickness, because that's what he really taught you. He taught you how to win with your mind and with your heart, with nothing to do with physical capabilities, and that's why Bill Russell was my favorite player of all time, because Bill Russell would come and just do everything with that mind. He would outthink everybody, and that's what Coach Wooden taught us how to do.
Did you learn anything from him? I mean, anything you think, well, my God.
Well, that's a number of things. First of all, he was one of the few coaches that would let his teams fast break in the 50s. Most of the coaches would not let their teams fast break. I feel really honored to be with the coach here.
Do you really? This table?
Yes, because you know, as you go through life and into your field, there are men that do things that respectable and honorable, and the coach coached always with dignity and honor, and like there were so many coaches that we encountered that tried to say things about him that were unkind, strictly out of jealousy. You know, he's playing all those players, and then he's running basketball, and you're never going to be able to win running the basketball. And he maintained almost in silence. You know, it's just saying, okay, this is the way I'm going to do it, and he did it that way. And it turns out that he was 100% correct. His success did not change the way he coached. See, he'd been coaching that way all the time from things he learned as a player. See, now, he's an excellent player. You know, they always say that great players don't make good coaches. Well, that makes a lot of that.
Here was a guy who taught everything. He didn't just teach defense, didn't just teach offense. He taught every aspect of basketball, every aspect of life, and never separated the two. With Coach Wooden, there was never an end to anything in life. I mean, you had practice, and then it was off to the team meal, and then off to the library, and then off to church, and then to bed, and then to class, and he's still that way today at 90 years old. This is the guy who is so busy, I can't even get him on the phone. But he sits there and he screens his calls, and when I get on the phone, he says, I'm not taking this one.
I'm glad you invited him.
I've noticed you can hardly get a word in. So let me see if I can do something about that. We talked about teaching. We talked about recruiting. Tell me what you think makes a great coach.
One that's truly interested and concerned about those under his supervision, and more so than just basketball, because basketball then will be a byproduct of all the others. I really believe that. And I think the outstanding coach is a teacher that gets all the squad to to accept the role that he considers to be the most important for the welfare of all, and that's hard because they all want certain roles, and they primarily want the scoring roles, if that's at all possible. And if you can't get them to accept the roles, one of the great players that Bill played with that I admired and would like to have had very much next to Bill was Casey Jones.
Yeah.
He played a role and nobody played it better.
Coach never talked about your ability in relation to someone else's. No. He always drove you in terms of being a competitor on an individual level that is driven by an ideal, to always push yourself to be a success on your own level, as opposed to the relative accomplishments of others. One of the best lessons that I learned from them was you control the terms of the conflict. Make them play your game. Don't try to play their game. If Bill had tried to play Wilt's game, it never would have worked. If Coach Wooden had tried to play somebody else's wild, crazy, chaotic game, it wouldn't have worked.
So what was Wooden's game?
Wooden's game was the team, first of all. Unbelievable physical fitness levels to where you could walk out there knowing that the other team was going to quit, and you could just look at them and they would just crumble. And then, of course, the skill development, which came from the 4 laws of learning, which he gave us all the time. Oh, it was so special.
Do you remember the 4 laws of learning?
Oh, absolutely.
Tell me.
Repetition is one.
Repetition.
Demonstration, correction, and explanation.
How about imitation?
Imitation.
Imitation, repetition.
I've been on too many red-eyed flights.
Let me come to you. Tell me what the 4 laws of learning are.
Well, the first is demonstration of what you want. The second is the criticism of the demonstration. The third is the imitation of the correct model, and the fourth is repetition over and over and over until it becomes habit, whereas you don't think about it. It's just
okay. Beyond that, back to what you were saying. I mean, what did Wooden's teams have? They had physical performance. They were stronger than the other guys. What else? They were better coach, but what does that mean?
He made us better basketball players. Each one of us came there as a very good player. But we left 4 years later, not only a better basketball player, infinitely better basketball player, but a better person as well, someone who could think, who could dream, who could analyze, who could visualize, who could set goals and accomplish goals, and he taught us how to learn. He taught us how to think. He taught us how to make a plan and achieve your goals, and he always did it in such an incredibly positive manner. There was so much joy, so much exuberance. There was never any sense of negativity.
How many championships did you win there?
Not enough. We lost our senior year.
And so you won 3 and lost your senior year? Did you know that?
What?
Who did you lose to?
North Carolina State.
All right. You mean when?
David Thompson.
Oh, David Thompson. North Carolina State, but David Thompson was there.
David Thompson and Tommy Burleson.
Wow.
Double overtime.
Double overtime.
With a 7-point lead, 11-point lead in the second half,
Middle of the second half,
and then a 7-point lead at the end of, down into the overtime, so we just gave it away.
What happened to you, John?
It wasn't him, it was me.
I goofed.
No.
Ask some of the alumni, they'll tell you.
Wait, is that the defeat that you remember the most, or?
Of all the games in which I was ever involved in college, that's the game that, more than any other, that will always haunt me. Yes.
March 23rd, 1974.
I goofed.
We had him.
You goofed?
I did.
And he always told us, don't beat yourself. It's the worst kind of defeat you'll ever suffer.
What did you do to goof?
He didn't goof
I
at all.
didn't do something that I should have done.
Which was?
I just didn't do something that I should have done.
When he said that, I remembered one time when I was coaching in Seattle, and we lost a game, and I came to the locker room, and I said to the guys, I lost this one. And they said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I'll just leave it at that this one I lost. And what happened was I fouled up with my substitution pattern. And so I took my team out of rhythm, and I could never get it back. See, I don't know, most people, unless the real coaches know how important rhythm is.
I mean, it is some sense that it would seem to me that it is your sense of not wanting to disparage someone else, that you should have made a change at some point, that you believe.
I was probably too stubborn about always about calling timeouts, and I should have. I know that afterwards, and I'm an optimistic type of person, I think, and I don't look back. If I make it, I try to make a decision that I think is right at the time. If it doesn't work out, that doesn't make it wrong. I shouldn't make it because of the media thought I should, or because the alumni thought I should, and I tried to do that. And I didn't make a decision in this particular case that I should have made, that I'm positive in my own mind, and had I made it, it would have affected. Now, I came on the plane yesterday coming out with David Myers, who was in that game, and David Myers is still mad at me. Well, we laughed about it. Coming out,
no, he's still mad. I'm embarrassed.
I should have had David Myers guarding Thompson instead of Stoddard. I should have had Wilkes on Stoddard in David Myers' mind. And
but it never should have come down to that. Back to the timeouts. He felt that timeouts, and I agree with this completely, that timeouts were an admission of defeat and just would give the other team a chance to regroup. He always felt that failing to prepare was preparing to fail. And he never called timeout. But we go back to that loss. That was not a loss about individual decisions made during that game. Because our senior season, the year we lost, we had the best team.
Was this after 88 wins?
Yes. We had the best team that we had in the 3 years I was. We had the most talent. But we didn't have the team in terms of being on the same page. We didn't have the discipline. We didn't have the organization. And we pushed him, we tested him so far that all the things that made us so great as sophomores and juniors were not present, and that's our fault. Because
I wonder if Bill would remember when I had this same team as practically all together sophomores, and they went undefeated. And at the end of that year, I told him how proud I was of them, but I said, next year we're going to be a better team, because I'll know you better, you'll know each other better, and we'll be a better team next year. But your third year, you'll probably be intolerable. And let me say this.
We were.
I was hoping that I would avoid that. Where the third year, they should have been the best of all, and we weren't.
No, you weren't just in the last game.
No, we weren't as good a team. Yeah. No.
UCLA, Coach Wooden, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, it was always about skill. And taking the dunk out of the game just gave a greater advantage to the skilled players, because the dunk itself is something that requires the least amount of skill to do it. All you have to do is just be big and jump high.
Don't tell Vince Carter that.
Well, the fans love it. They're not going to take it up. A couple of years ago at UCLA, one of the games, one of our players got out in front all alone. All he had to do was jump up and lay it in, which he did. He spun around, threw it down there, and they stumped their feet, the student body and the fans. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "What did you think of that, Coach?" And I said, "I had him out there before he hit the floor."
Out of the game.
Well, you know, I could dunk.
Oh, he was so, and he never, ever let it slip. There was no grace period. I mean, you either followed every single rule or you were on that bench. And when you had a disagreement with him, he would always say,
"Let me repeat your words. I would have had him out of there before he hit the floor."
Charlie, when you had a disagreement with him, he always would say, we really, I admire that individualism. I admire your firm beliefs there. And we've really enjoyed your stay here at UCLA, but we're going to miss you.
Now, tell him the one that really, truly happened. Tell him about that one.
What?
Not your hair.
Oh, the senior year.
We showed the long hair.
There wasn't a hair. It was shorter than it is today. And I showed up for our senior year. We had won 75 straight games. We had already hammered Bill Russell's college records there. We were two-time college player of the year, academic All-American. Everything was just perfect. We couldn't have done any. We had won everything. I showed up, and I hadn't shaved that day, and my hair was just a little bit out of place. And he comes in that locker room for our daily inspection, and he goes, "Walton, that's not good enough." We had this big argument. Everybody said, "Come on, Coach, he looks fine." Coach says, "No, that's not good enough. You can't practice." I was already in my gear. I was already taped up. I realized immediately that I had lost this big argument. I jumped on my bike. My bike was right there in the locker room. I jumped on my bike, raced down into Westwood, jumped in the barber chairs, and shave it all off, just cut it all off. And I got back on my bike, rode right onto the floor of Poly Pavilion, dumped my bike onto the floor, and stepped right into the drills and hoped that he wouldn't notice I had missed the first 15 minutes of practice.
As usual, Bill, I exaggerated a little. But he did say I didn't have the right to tell him how to wear his hair. And I said, I do not have the right, Bill, but I do have the right to say who's going to play, and we're going to miss you.
You got the message.
Yes, he did.
But see, he created an environment where everyone on the team believed that what he said he was going to follow through on, and he also had us so committed to the team that none of us ever thought that anything was more important than being part of that team. Yeah. Coach and I had a very moving moment when we both went into the Academic All-American Hall of Fame, and it was down in Washington, D.C., and we went that afternoon over to the Lincoln Memorial. Abraham Lincoln is Coach's favorite American. We went right next door to the Vietnam Memorial, and it was just, as anybody who's ever been there knows what an incredibly emotional experience that is. And when we walked out of there, we both had some tears running down our cheeks, and Coach recited an incredible poem that I can't, you know, he is so phenomenal with his poetry. And
you remember what it was?
No written word, no oral plea can teach our youth what they should be, nor all the books on all the shelves. It's what the teachers are themselves. And the other one was that they ask me why I teach. They ask me why I teach, and I reply, where could I find such splendid company? There sits a statesman, strong, unbiased, wise, another later Webster, silver tongue. A doctor sits beside him whose quick, steady hand may mend a bone or stem the lifeblood's flow. And there a builder, upward rise the arches of that church he builds, wherein that minister may speak the word of God and lead a stumbling soul to touch the Christ. And all about a gathering of teachers, farmers, merchants, laborers, men, those who work and vote and build and plan and pray until tomorrow. And I may say I may not eat the food or see the church or hear the word and where they speak, and yet again I may. And later I may say, I knew him once, and he was weak or strong or bold or proud or gay. I knew him once, but then he was a boy. They ask me why I teach, and I reply, where could I find such splendid company?
John Wooden, the great master of basketball and inspiration, dead at 99.